righty.
Sure.
Thanks, Ricky.
Thanks, Ricky.
Jill, you need an agenda?
I just printed it, thank you.
Okay.
All right. Good morning. Today is July 20th, 2023, and the time is 10:02, and we're going to call to order the Cuyahoga County Equity Commission. My name is David Merriman. I'm the Director of Health and Human Service, the Chair, and I'm going to begin with a roll call. I'll turn to my left. Lenora Lockett.
Here.
Sarah Nemistill, representing HR.
Here.
And Jill Smilek, representing Public Safety Justice Affairs.
Here, thank you.
We have a quorum. So we're going to begin with a review and approval of the minutes. The minutes have been posted. Are there any revisions or comments? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Public comment, I don't believe anyone has signed in for public comment. Is that correct?
Correct.
So there's no public comment today. So what we'll do is we're going to begin with opening remarks. And I'll go ahead and I'll start at the far left with Jill. And then we'll do Sarah and Lenora, and then I'll finish. And so, Jill, anything you'd like to share?
Good morning. I think the only thing to share right now from Public Safety and Justice Services is that, of course, like every department, we're looking at budget items and planning for our spending over the next year. And one thing that we have made a commitment to is incorporating those equity zones into decision making. So we've got a couple of public safety grants opportunities where we're providing some direct assistance to communities, and we want to make sure that we incorporate the equity zones into the community process. So that's one thing that I'm pretty excited about. It's a nice addition to our decision-making process that I think will be really helpful moving forward.
Awesome.
That's great.
Thanks.
Sarah?
Good morning, Sarah Nemistill, Director of Human Resources. So I've been in my new position for a little over 2 months now, and trying to settle in, but learning more about HR and specifically its own DEI initiatives. And we have our own very active DEI committee that I'll talk a little bit more about with respect to a specific item on the agenda. But looking forward to working through the rest of the year in 2024 and looking at HR policy with an equity lens and how we can advance equity initiatives throughout the county, and sitting down with Lenora and really getting an understanding of how we can work together to get those initiatives done.
Awesome.
Great. Lenora?
Thank you. I'll just provide a brief update on 2 events that DEI partner with others, and thank you all for the support here for those events. First, the Mid-Year Equity Summit. The first one was held Thursday, June 15th. We had the welcome from Council President Pernell Jones, and we also had key opening remarks from County Executive Christopher Lane. There were more than 50 executive leaders and directors and managers that attended, so that was a well-received program. The second event was our collaboration with the Department of Purchasing for the County Vendors Pitch Day and Fair. We also had collaboration representation from several departments listed, seated here. Thank you very much. And there were more than 100 attendees representing 100 businesses. So that was a good turnout. And I want to really thank the communications department for getting the message out. I saw advertisements on the digital boards for the buildings, in the elevators, on social media. So the partnership, again, demonstrated the need and the impact when we all work together to promote an event or equity initiatives, how it can increase the impact.
I have a couple things to announce. So one, today there is a child support in-person hiring event that's going on this afternoon. I'm really grateful that Rebecca Kopczynski and the PRC is on today. We'll be having a presentation from her shortly. Also joined with Sarah Nemistill's team in this. And I just want to take a minute and acknowledge how I think important these events have become, and really a sign of what I think is good government, and the fact that a resident can walk through the door with their resume at hand, interview, have some preliminary screening. There might be a few follow-up steps that need to still occur, but in essence, a resident walks out with sort of a conditioned job offer. And I just would say, from a county perspective, the ability to rapidly hire, the ability to find employees that are able to represent the community and serve our residents is really, it's the backbone of the organization. It's the backbone of the work we do. And I want to point out and acknowledge both Rebecca's team and Sarah's team for their critical support for those initiatives and the fact that we've sustained them. This is one of the things that we've learned has an effect coming out of COVID, and I think they're really important, and I want to say thank you. Second thing is we have an RFP that's going to be released later this week that will be establishing a child wellness campus. This will help us begin better serving children that are in our custody that need some specialty services. And as we've been exploring the creation of this campus, we've had a number of community groups approach us to say, we're not a normal provider. We've never applied for something like this. Or we've applied for something else. We don't know that we could go for something as big as this. And I've referred all of them to the pitch day. And I thought the pitch day was really an excellent opportunity for us to be able to have organizations that in the past might have interest but not feel confident or comfortable with the process, giving them the opportunity, kind of as I almost said with the in-person hiring events, to walk through the door with their paperwork in hand and just sit down and talk to somebody and to understand our process, to be considered and heard, was really important. I heard that from several of the folks that attended. I know Marcos Cortez from our office attended, and he went in with kind of unclear expectations and said it was a great event. So congratulations, Lenore. I thought it was a great idea to have these pitch events. I hope we can continue to do them, and we will all support you to promote them.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to our next agenda item, but we do have a couple other guests with us today. So what I'd like to do is I'll turn to my right, and some are reoccurring and some are new staff. So I'll just ask each of you to introduce yourselves and say which department you're with.
Hi, Katie Gallagher, the Executive's Office. Thomas Layton, Department of Equity and Inclusion.
Ella Murdoch, Department of Equity and Inclusion.
Welcome. Thank you all for being here today. So we're going to move on to our next item, unless there's any questions for each other. Okay. So our next item is HR's Your Voice event, and I think I'm turning this over to Sarah.
Yeah. Thanks, David. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about an event that the Human Resources, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee hosted on June 30th, a couple weeks ago. Basically, it was its second Can We Talk Conversations That Matter panel discussion, and the theme of this discussion was Your Vote, Your Voice, highlighting and educating employees and the public on the important impact of voting, which of course is very timely in light of the upcoming special election on issue 1. The panel featured our own Councilwoman Meredith Turner from District 9, who has served as an elected official at the Board of Election and of course has been very committed to civic engagement within our community. Meredith Helmer, who is the president of the Board of Northeast Ohio Voter Advocates, and she has coordinated voter registration and voting within our correction center since 2006. So great partner of ours. And Mike West, who a longtime Board of Elections employee, who's their manager of community outreach. But just wanted to talk about it here a little bit because this election is very important, and voting is so critical to advancing equity initiatives, within our community. So mainly this event highlighted some of the changes in the rules that have occurred in light of this upcoming election. And because of the issue at hand, I think it's really important that we do our best to get the information out to the community. So it can be live streamed on our YouTube page. So if you weren't able to see it, please take a look at it and send the link to others. Also, I did want to just add that Rebecca Kopczynski from the PRC, she's the director of the Personnel Review Commission, is here. And I invited her to come speak with us today because I recently had the opportunity to hear about the PRC's equity initiatives for the coming year at one of their meetings. And Rebecca's doing some really great things with her team and the commissioners at the PRC. And so I thought it would be wonderful to share it with all of you and the public. And just, reminding that, as David kind of said, the PRC is a really important partner to the executive agencies, and it touches HR and, our personnel issues in so many ways. So very thankful to Rebecca and her team for all that they do. And
Sounds good. Any questions first on your voice event?
I did watch the stream, so it is very easy to find on the county's YouTube page, and a lot of good content,
Yeah, well, thank you for doing that.
information.
Agreed. It is an important matter.
Oh, and I'll just say thank you to my team for putting it together. Our DEI is co-chaired by Kim Coleman, and our HR department and Laura Cannon. They did a really nice job. So.
Now, and I'll recognize voter support and encouragement is a part of our charter. It is included in the county's charter as a necessary function of this county government. I think every department should take up that opportunity to help support voting. So if there are no other questions, I'm going to move us on to our next item, which is the Personnel Review Commission's equity initiatives. And so I'd like to first welcome and thank Rebecca for joining us again today. And as we share space over at West Shore, I know that we have a lot of partnership with the PRC across a lot of initiatives. But I'm really excited to hear about what you have today. So, Rebecca, I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself and share what you're working on these days.
And wait a minute, 1 second.
Thank you.
Technical.
Thank you, David. Am I good to go?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
I do appreciate very much the opportunity to be in front of you folks today. And before I get started, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge Sarah and her team. One of the things that has been able to occur over the past few years is we have been really working hard to establish a cooperative and collaborative relationship with HR, and we've been able to do that. And Sarah and her team have been particularly cooperative with us in some of these initiatives. So if I forget to mention it during my presentation, HR is usually involved in all of these things that we're doing, and we do sincerely appreciate the collaboration. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to start for a minute by just talking about the PRC's role in Cuyahoga County government. Our fundamental obligation is to ensure an employment system that's based on merit and fitness, which is essentially to say that employment decisions should be based on qualifications and performance, not some of the other things that used to drive some of the employment decisions at the county before the reorganization many years ago. There are 4 general responsibilities that we have that are laid out pretty clearly under the charter. We hear appeals, we do compliance audits, and we also have responsibility for administration of the classification and compensation systems for the classified employees. And of course, we do civil service testing. And those last 2 are highlighted in yellow because that's where a lot of our DEI initiatives are hovering around. The PRC actually functions as a gatekeeper to county employment because inherently in our work, what we're doing in many cases is establishing various barriers to employment. So these 4 general areas where we write and publish classification specifications, we establish minimum qualifications for classifications, we also screen applications, and then we develop these tests. At every point in this process, we know that people get screened out of the employment opportunity process for the county. So we're very mindful that these these actions and functions have to be equitable, they have to be free of discrimination, and so we're very mindful and attentive to that. Earlier this year, I did lay out an update to our strategic initiatives and our strategic plan to our commissioners, and we we were very thoughtful about what went into that presentation and what we were going to focus on in the future. Most of you who have been here any period of time know that from 2015 on, we have been focusing primarily on getting our primary functions up and running and making so that they're as good as they can be done. And so now we're shifting our focus a little bit. And because DEI is very closely aligned with the mission of the PRC, we're excited about these opportunities to move the ball forward in this realm. There are basically 4 initiatives that we laid out in front of the commissioners, and we're going to get some of these are going to be done this year and some of these are going to continue on into next year. But basically, we're looking to reduce bias in the job documents. We're reviewing driver's license requirements, and also after that, we're going to be looking at other license and certification requirements. And then we're going to redefine minimum qualifications to include equivalencies. And redefine might not be the best word, but we're going to I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute, but we're basically going to redesign how we present those minimum qualifications to applicants. Our first goal, reducing bias in job documents. When I say job documents, it could be the documents that we maintain or the ones that HR maintains, the class specs, position descriptions, the job postings. All of those are documents that applicants and employees see at some point. And parts of the classification specifications are actually uploaded to build the postings for the positions, the classified positions. So we know that these are forward-facing documents, that applicants are affected by what they see on the screen when they read these things. So we also know that our documents may contain language-based bias, and that those can influence different groups of applicants differently. So we're looking at text analyzer software, and one of the things that this does, one of the biggest things that will do for us is that it does flag words that are perceived differently by different groups, and it recommends neutral alternatives. So we're very excited about the possibility of getting this moving. In addition, the research shows that if you remove bias, some of those coded words are taken out of your job documents, you can boost applications, which of course would be a bonus because we all know we're struggling for applicants. So our goal this year with that, and this is a joint effort with HR as well. They've been involved in the demo and discussions about how this would be helpful to us. We're going to request funding for this. It's not a cheap endeavor, but we are hoping to get the funding and the support from council to do this and roll this out next year and finish the RFP and get that done this year. So that's our first one. Our second and third initiatives both have to do with reviewing other requirements. So driver's license requirements, we know, can disproportionately affect applicants. We know that sometimes disabled people are reluctant to apply for jobs where it says a driver's license might be required. We know that foreign-born citizens who sometimes encounter more challenges to get a driver's license can be adversely affected by that requirement. And we know that applicants with revoked licenses for past offenses are more likely to be in a protected class. So this is a pretty serious requirement that we have included in almost 33% of our classifications across 12 departments. And some of you have already been involved with this, but we are looking at these carefully, trying to ask the hard questions. Is it really necessary? Can the job be done without it? We don't want to screen out people who don't have this unless it's absolutely critical in the job. And I think last I heard from Albert, his team is working on this, and I think we've eliminated these in about 20% of the jobs. Not as big an impact as we had thought we would see. We're not done with it yet, but still, we are able to remove a barrier to employment, which does excite us. The license and the certification requirements, these have not been seriously critically analyzed for a long time. And some of you may have heard some discussion over the past year about employers who are doing a full-scale degree reset where they're eliminating degree requirements in their jobs across the board. We had some discussions about that. It's not really viable for us to do that, but we are taking sort of we're going at least this part of this. We're looking at the license and certification requirements to make sure that they're valid requirements too. Again, almost 30% of our classifications require some sort of certification or license. And some of those are identified as preferred in the job description, so they're not always held out as a screening tool, but we want to make sure that if there is a certification or a license required, for example, we know our nurses have to have licenses, so that's an easy call. But some of the other ones are really, they're not job related, or they're things that people can acquire after they're on the job. So we want to make sure they're not a part of our screening out process. The last thing that I want to talk about is our fourth goal is reformatting minimum qualifications. So most of you know this, but minimum qualifications are included in our classification specifications as a statement that lays out what's the required in education, education and experience for a job. And this is what we use to actually determine who can take a civil service exam. So for example, you might see a statement that reads bachelor's degree in accounting or related fields, and then 1 year of related experience. And most classifications also include this language at the end of that statement that says, or any equivalent combination of education, training, and experience. One of the things we know is that in some of the research has shown that women tend to not apply for a job if they don't exactly meet the qualifications as they're stated. Men are a little bit freer with their applications. So we know that that's an important difference in how that affects people. And so one of the things that happens in the back office here at the PRC is that the testing team works with the subject matter experts and the hiring managers to develop equivalencies, which are statements about for people who don't have the specific minimum qualifications, what are the other combinations of education and experience? And this is an example of the chart that the PRC uses to screen applicants in or out. We aren't showing that to applicants, and we just feel it's really important that we get that piece of information out to applicants so they can look at that and say, oh, if I don't have a bachelor's degree, but I have an associate's degree and 3 years of experience, I should go ahead and apply for this job. So we're working with Sarah's team to get this up and forward facing again to the applicants, trying to make it part of our class plan specs, which are always available on our website. But also we want this to be up in the postings as well, so that more people are encouraged to apply. And again, it aligns well with the DEI initiatives, because anything we can do to broaden our applicant pool is going to help achieve a more diverse workforce. It also will help us, we hope, with the struggles that we're having trying to get applicants in the door. So I want to take just a moment and talk about some of the ongoing work that we're doing that's aligned with the DEI initiatives. People don't like the testing that we do. We know, we're aware. But our testing team adheres to the professional standards in test development and design. And this is one of the things that we do that we're so passionate about, because we know that this levels a playing field. It ensures that people who are being hired have a certain set of qualifications. And it does sort of like draw a line so that we aren't seeing some of the practices of the past where hiring was abused. And it helps to ensure equity in our hiring processes. The other thing that we're doing is we continue to review the class plan to identify redundancies and ensure that there are meaningful differences in work between jobs. One of the things we found with the class plan, and this is particularly applicable to the series, when you have 3 or 4 jobs in a series, that we noticed that sometimes the only difference between one job and the next job up, which usually was in a different pay grade, was an additional 6 months of experience. And then you might see that again in the next layer. So they were built, those series sometimes were built and designed, it appears, to accomplish compensation objectives. And they weren't really built on meaningful differences in the job and the requirements. And we want to get back to the point that the class plan is rich with meaning and that those differences are legitimate, because that's one of the ways that we ensure pay equity in this organization, is by ensuring that people who are doing different work are recognized in a different pay grade. But if they're not really doing different work, we're not about longevity. That's something that we sort of preached early on. We're not here to encourage or promote policies that are built around the concept of longevity. We're about meaningful differences in work between jobs. And then the other thing that we're doing this year is we are expanding our compliance audits to focus on consistency and equity. Some of those areas are laid out very specifically for us under the charter. We're doing 3 new audits this year that we haven't done before, and we'll probably do 3 new ones next year. And we want to continue to expand that, because that's one of the things that I think, if you look at our role in the charter government, we are here to try and help ensure consistency. And so we will be expanding that function and that functional area. And the last thing, I didn't put it on a slide, but we have had some initial conversations with the administration about this. We're really anxious to begin the dialogue about pay equity. This is timely. This is long overdue at the county, and it's a big endeavor. It's a lot of things that can be done, a lot of ways that we can look at this, but we're really serious about hoping to engage the administration and having those discussions, because we can study it all day long over here, but if we don't have the commitment from the administration to help address some of those issues that might be discovered in a pay equity study, then it's sort of moot. So we're really looking forward to continued dialogue about that. And that's about all I have to say today, except for thank you. This is really a great opportunity for us. We're really passionate about this subject, and anything we could do to help, let us know.
I'm going to open it up for questions in a second. I do have a few questions myself. I think as we switch over the slide. There we go.
Okay.
And so first, thank you for being here today. I was wondering, Rebecca, can you give an example on that first goal where you talked about the bias in language, sort of things that you think might be present now, and some ideas or some examples of how you think changes might look in the future?
Well, I can tell you one of the things that struck me in our first demo was the term brown bag lunch, which is something that's on the surface you wouldn't think would have any impact, but we're looking at words like strong, aggressive or assertive, things that are characteristics that would typically be associated maybe with a male persona rather than a female persona, to get that kind of language out of there. So anybody who's interested, we're going to continue to demo these products, and if anybody's interested, we're happy to let you see some of that. But we have not been looking at that kind of stuff, to be honest. We have been trying to get our job descriptions up to date, class specs up to date, and make sure that they reflect the work and the technology that's being used in the work. This is going to be a whole new focus for us, but I think it's going to be profoundly impactful, I think.
Sounds good. So I have a second question. Some of it relates to it. I think one of the things I heard you say is that, just an acknowledgement in the past that hiring maybe didn't go the way that it should have or could have, or that it was abused. And I guess in some ways I'm just curious if you can talk a little bit about how that perspective sort of fits with all the other efforts that you're doing now to reconsider the existing policy. I guess my position is, sounds like policy may have been broken in the past under certain with some hiring, and but did you have administrators, did you have hiring authorities hiring people outside the norm because they were able to see through some of the biases that you're working against now, and maybe finding candidates that that they felt like this is the right candidate, even though maybe it doesn't look that way on paper. This is clearly the right person. So I guess I'm testing or challenging a little bit the idea that, have we followed policy too much, or at times did we maybe step outside of policy because we could see through some of the biases that you're now concerned about?
I don't know, David, that it was necessarily bias that was driving decisions. I think that, there clearly some nepotism going on, clearly some favoritism, clearly some political influences going on in the hiring practices. And I had an interesting conversation with a member of the administration a few weeks ago about the laws that we do enforce, the civil service laws, because this person was under the impression that this all came into play when the charter was enacted. And I educated this person and said, these laws have actually been on the books since 1913. There is some evolution in how these civil service laws have applied to counties, but really what we're doing is putting procedures and practices into place that are compliant with the civil service laws of Ohio that have been on the books for a very long time. Does that answer your question?
It does. I think it's an open issue, but I think the important thing is that we look at it, we talk about it, and we just, we continue to allow our systems and our processes to develop and respond. Let me open it up. Anybody have other questions or things you'd like to bring up on this presentation?
I have a question, David and Rebecca. I'm Jill Smilik with Public Safety and Justice Services.
Hi, Jill.
Hi. I just have a sort of a reflection and a question. So when we were asked to, received communication from Albert, asked to look at a few different job descriptions that currently require a driver's license. And I worked with each of our managers to make sure that we were kind of all on the same page and provided that information back. But I'm just curious, for some of them, our reaction was kind of, I guess they don't have to have a driver's license, but there's certainly a lot of efficiency in being able to get to meetings or get to events out in the community, but there are alternatives if they could carpool or take a bus or something like that. I'm just wondering how you are reconciling that, like the efficiency of being able to be out in the community because you have a driver's license versus requiring to have that driver's license. Just curious how that's ending up.
Yeah, it's a really good question, Jill, and I appreciate the question because it does talk about the nuance of this, right? This is not cut and dried, yes and no, but when there are efficiency concerns in place, I don't think the PRC is ever going to take issue with a policy or a requirement that's about efficiency because that's part of our obligation to the taxpayers as well. And I'd have to look at your position specifically, but I think in general, when Albert has asked the questions, when we were looking at the decisions, it's about if that is going to help your department operation go more efficiently. We aren't asking people to get on a bus and take an hour and a half to get to an appointment that they could get to in 20 minutes, with public. It's just more about a critical eye on the requirement and making sure that if it's really not necessary. And we had a couple of positions in our own department here that had the requirements still in the class spec, and we're like, we don't do that anymore. We're not driving it anywhere. So those opportunities came up. We took it out. At some point, we're going to issue a statement or a report, a letter to the administration and thank them for their cooperation, first of all, and then talk about the outcome and what we were able to achieve. But I think, Jill, when the hiring managers bring up issues like that, I think we're not militant about it. I think we're considerate of that concern. It's important,
Yeah, thank you. I was just curious
Sure.
how those discussions are progressing. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Other questions? I want to point out that I've found the interactions with your team to be very helpful when we've had candidates that appear not to meet the minimum qualifications. But I think as we've reviewed some of their resumes and their applications, at times we've seen it differently. And I just appreciate the ability to sort of talk through those positions. And generally speaking, I found that the PRC has been very accommodating and willing to allow candidates to be formally presented on the list when that discussion does occur. I think there's also a lot of what you've said about potential gender differences in terms of people presenting their background or their experiences almost to the letter of the law or the letter of the application and skipping things that would count and should count and do count, and in some ways, potentially disqualifying themselves. So this is promising to hear that you're recognizing that. I know that I've seen it, and I've been able to surface candidates that I thought were absolutely viable candidates that should be considered, but they had undersold themselves. And that, I knew enough about their resume and saw their experiences to be able to present them. And your team was very open and willing. And I think ultimately, regardless of whatever policy is in place, having that ability to go back and talk it through is always very valuable and something that I very much appreciate.
Good. Thank you. I'm glad your experience has been good, and I'll share that with the team. We encourage them to be open-minded. So, all right.
Great. Any other
thank
questions?
you all I just want to say thank you all very much for the opportunity to come. This is so closely aligned with our fundamental obligation in county government that I really appreciate the opportunity. So thank you.
Well, and as I said, thank you for being out at Virgil Brown this afternoon, and your willingness to. I understand you said you don't require driver's licenses, but I'm assuming this means someone got in a car and drove out to VEB and is parking somewhere and is part of the interviews. Thank you very much for doing that.
You're welcome. All right. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Too.
Bye-bye.
All right. I think we've moved through our agenda. I think we're going to move now to closing remarks. We'll go in reverse order unless there's anything else that we have to consider for our agenda. Lenore, I'll start with you.
Okay, thank you. First, I want to thank Sarah and Rebecca for definitely bringing up these topics and being willingness to present those to the public. Transparency is always the first part and critical part about advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion is that making sure a broad audience is aware of those opportunities and the work that the county is doing. I would just wanted to mention a couple of projects that we have coming up in the near future. As a part two or continuation of the county vendors pitch day and fair, we are going to start having a virtual monthly vendors assistance hour. It's going to be on the fourth Thursday of every month from 9 to 10, where they can call in or join us virtually and ask any questions, where we can provide similar assistance, albeit it won't be the face-to-face that they had at the pitch day, which we are planning on doing some type of repeat of that event. But every fourth Thursday, we're looking to 9 to 10 be available to give assistance to vendors who have general questions. Also, the contract was approved with amendment with Tri-C was approved in June. So we will be providing makeup sessions. The project team is consisting of HR, Clerk Bird as a representative from the Citizens Advisory Council of Equity and her additional duties that she's taken on voluntarily. And our internal team, we're working with Tri-C to develop the plan to implement those makeup sessions. So more details will follow on those.
Great. It's wonderful to hear about that you're going to be doing the reoccurring virtual pitch day. I think that's great customer service, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sarah?
Just want to say that I look forward to continuing to work on this committee and with Lenore and her team and Clerk Bird and with Tri-C. And I don't know if you talked about it. I can't remember in the beginning, Lenore, but you had the DEI department had the mid-year equity summit.
Yes.
And I just wanted to say thank you for hosting that. It was a great seminar and really enlightening for our leadership team. So
Thank you for always being supportive and quick supportive. I appreciate it.
Jill?
Yeah, I'll just say really quickly, we are hosting our 5th annual Camp Hope starting Sunday, which is a summer camp, residential 5 nights summer camp for kids who've been exposed to violence. We know, of course, violence impacts communities of all kinds, but it disproportionately impacts communities of color. So we're hosting 40 kids, 5 nights. It's probably my favorite part of my job. But we are looking forward especially to hosting First Responders Day, which is coming up on Thursday, July 27th, where we have police and fire from various communities across the county coming out to interact with the kids. They ask tough questions about, do you pull over more people of color? Or it's really an interesting time for the kids to get to know first responders in a way that maybe they haven't before. Right. So just putting that out there, it's a really great event. So.
Nice.
A few announcements on my part. First, I just want to acknowledge that yesterday we had a JFS, Job and Family Service Outreach Day, where we were at Friendly and Settlement Houses, where we brought both our direct services, Job and Family Service eligibility specialists, into the community to be present for one-on-one interactions with clients, but also many of you had your teams there and were present, outreaching, providing information about your programs and services as well. We have another one of those scheduled for next Wednesday, I believe. And I think these are great events because in many ways, first, we do address barriers to transportation by getting out into the community, but more importantly, we humanize our services. I think that goes both ways. I think our staff, and as we increasingly are working virtually, need to see that our clients in person and hear from them and have the opportunity to engage, and vice versa. Our clients need to see us and understand the work that we're doing. As I left the event yesterday, I saw there was a line of people looking to talk to an eligibility specialist, and that many of the resource tables were full of staff and residents talking about issues. Our next one is planned for next Wednesday, the 26th. It's at the multi-language school gala, and that's from, I believe, 1 to 3. Similarly, we have a family fun day that's being scheduled for August 1st, and so this will be done at Public Square, and we're going to have many of the same services and resources available to the public. Public will also be invited to come and get backpacks with school supplies and more information is available on our website on those events. This is a reoccurring annual event. We're very excited to really see the public come and to engage and to be able to help prepare kids for school. Last thing I just want to point out, so Tuesday was a milestone for us, I believe, in our county in electing what I understand to be the first Hispanic sheriff. And as I think we all recognize the critical role of the sheriff and how difficult that job is, I just think it's wonderful for us to have a veteran leader like Sheriff Pertel, who stepped forward and who has taken on this responsibility. I hope in the near future we can invite him to one of our meetings, and we can give him an opportunity to hear from us what we're working on and maybe hear from him some of his ideas. I don't think this needs to happen in the next month or two or even in the first quarter. I think if we give him time to get up to speed, that would probably be appreciated. But I do want to put on our agenda an invitation for him to come forward to hear about this work and our goal. And lastly, I just want to call on and acknowledge County Executive Ronayne for finding a candidate of Sheriff Patel's caliber, and for County Council for their commitment and support in appointing him to that appointing him and confirming him to that very critical, important job. And I think with that, unless there's any other announcements or any other feedback, I think we're adjourned. Anything else? I'm sorry, Lenora, next meeting, you could just call that out. I know it's on the agenda.
Yeah, so our next meeting will be October 5th. No, sorry, I'm working on another thing. Our next meeting is September 21st at 2020, at 10 a.m. Again, our next meeting for the Equity Commission will be Thursday, September 21st.
Wonderful.
At 10 a.m.
All right. Well, with that, our meeting's adjourned. Thank you.